In the first reading, Paul is writing to the Jewish Christian community in Corinth. When Paul writes, "Brethren, I do not want you to be unaware, or I do not want you to be ignorant," and again, we must never forget, we should be on the alert, for he is saying something that we need to know. Today he writes, "For we never forget, dear brothers, what happened to our people in the wilderness long ago. God guided them by sending a cloud that moved along ahead of them, and he brought them all safely through the waters of the Red Sea." Paul then goes on to remind the Corinthians that God did make them his people. He ends up by saying something quite startling. Yet we know that God was not pleased with most of them, and they were struck down in the desert. You know how many people Moses led through the desert? Those servants of Israel, of Egypt rather, 600,000, not counting men and children. Do you know how many actually entered the promised land? 2. He was not pleased with most of them. Most of them died in the desert and never got to it was the next generation that entered under Joshua. In another translation we read, "Yet after all, most of them did not obey God, and he destroyed them in the wilderness." Of the thousands who left Egypt to inherit the promised land, how many actually entered? Only 2, Joshua and Caleb. The rest of them perished in the wilderness. Being baptized into Moses and following God's guidance for them a while was not enough to guarantee their reward. They did not fully trust the Lord, even when they saw his works. You know how much it takes to feed 600,000 people, not counting women and children? And yet God fed them in the desert, provided water for them in the desert. They failed to persevere and failed to finish what they started. They were a people who started out on a journey that would make them intimates of God, but they did not complete the journey. The lesson is clear for us. Being baptized, coming to Eucharist, and saying our prayers are not enough. There must be perseverance in faithful discipleship. There must be self-discipline and the use of all the gifts that God has provided for us. St. Paul continues, "These things happened as an example to keep us from wicked desires such as theirs. So be careful. If you are thinking, 'Oh, I would never behave like that,' let this be a warning to you, for you too may fall into sin." Lent then is a time for us to make house corrections. It's not just spring cleaning in our homes. It's spring cleaning in our souls. How are we following the way of the Lord? It's supposed to be with our whole heart, with our whole soul, and with all our mind. Do we give just a little taste of the Lord? It's a chance for us to spend time thinking about that.